Hey, thanks for joining us online here at Flatirons. We're continuing on in our series called Heart Attack. If you have any questions or if we can help you out with anything, you can hop online, flatironschurch.com on our website or any of our social media accounts, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. We're glad that you're here. Hope you enjoy.
Hi, how are we? We good? Yeah? Good. All right, hey, so I'm Ben. I'm the teaching pastor here. I'm glad you're here. If you're here for the first time, welcome. If you're here for the 1,000th time, I'm glad you're back. I'm especially glad you're here in the middle of this series that we've called Heart Attack. All right, and so whether you're new or you need reminded, you missed a few or whatever, here's what we're doing in the middle of this series. Okay, so we're taking a section of Jesus' very famous Sermon on the Mount, and we're taking just one section of it in Matthew 5, where Jesus talks about these circumstances and these situations that you and I and everybody in the room is going to have to deal with. All right, so far we've talked about anger and contempt and lust and relationships. That's the kind of stuff that Jesus is talking about. And what we've been talking about in this series is the fact that Jesus is primarily concerned with the heart of the matter, which means he's more concerned with heart transformation than he is behavior modification. He cares more about who you are becoming than what you are doing, right or wrong. He just knows that the behavior will follow if our hearts change first. And today I want to get right into it. I want to pick up where we left off in Matthew 5:33, where Jesus talks about the importance of our words. And he talks about the power that exists behind both truth and lies. All right, and in my opinion, the next 5 verses are the crux of this entire section of Jesus' talk. Meaning if we can get this stuff right, if we can live within the boundaries of these next 5 verses, then everything else that he's taught us so far will gradually fall into place. And that's because both honesty and dishonesty are very, very powerful things. So my daughter, Emery, she's 5.5 years old, and she's learning how to lie right now. I'm not teaching her, I don't think, but she's learning it naturally. And it makes me sad, and I think it's hilarious too. It's sad because I wish that as human beings we didn't have this innate urge to just hide truth from other people. I think life would just be better if we were all honest with one another. So it makes me sad. It's also hilarious because Emery sucks so bad at lying right now. She's terrible at it. So for example, we have this thing at bedtime. If you got little kids, I'm sure you got the same thing, where we do the whole routine. I get her tucked in. I say, I love you, good night. I'm leaving. And as I'm closing the door, she suddenly has a billion things to tell me. You know, she's trying to keep me in the room. So I made a new rule, and the rule is when I'm closing the door, you can tell me something, but you can only tell me one more thing. And she cashes in every single night. So I'm closing the door. She goes, can I tell you one more thing? I'm like, yeah, sure. What do you have to tell me? And she makes it up on the spot every time. She's just like, do unicorns live in houses or what's going on there? She just makes it up, all right? So the other night, we do the whole routine. We even do the one pointless thing as I'm closing the door. I don't remember what she said. I say, I love you, good night. Door's almost closed, and she freaks out. She goes, wait, no, Dad, wait. I actually have one more thing to tell you, and it's really important. And she sounded genuine. And so I open the door and I look at her and I go, hey, Em, listen, you can tell me one more thing, but only if it's really, really important. So are you being honest? And she kind of furrows her brow and she goes, what's honest? And so now I'm explaining honesty for the first time in my life. And I'm like, okay, it's when you don't lie. It's when you tell the truth. So are you being honest? Do you actually have something really, really important to tell me? She's silent, and you can tell she's processing the entire concept of honesty for the first time. And then after a couple seconds, she slowly smiles this real sly-looking smile. And so I ask her one more time, I'm like, are you being honest? And she just chuckles and goes, no. And I was laughing at her. At that point, I was curious. I was like, well, what were you going to tell me in the first place? And she goes, oh, I didn't think of it yet. At least she ended up being honest that time. Sometimes she's just flat out dishonest. She just lies to her face. Like a couple months ago, her and Micah were at our dining room table, and they're doing crafts and drawing and stuff. Allie comes downstairs, and she realizes that they're quiet. And if you have little kids, you know that that's always terrible news if everybody's quiet. So Allie kind of turns the corner, and Micah is just staring at Em, and Em is paralyzed in fear. And so Allie does a quick Sherlock Holmes analysis of the situation. And she sees that Emery is sitting on her hands as if she's hiding something. There's a pair of scissors on the table. And there's a section of Emery's hair that is like much shorter than it was 5 minutes ago. And so Allie very calmly, she goes, hey, Em, did you cut your hair? And Em goes, no. And Allie goes, well, let me see what's in your hands. And Em slowly pulls her hands up to just this huge clump of hair that should be right here on her face and her hands, just lying to our faces. And it's hilarious and it's sad. And it's sad because she's only 5, right? And you and I have done this at a very early age. We learned how to lie and create this inner world of secrecy, right? And we never really unlearned it, did we? We carry this capacity to deceive and to be secret up into our adulthood. We never let go of it. Sometimes it's motivated by fear. Sometimes it's motivated by wanting to manipulate other people, but we can't seem to unlearn this tendency we have to deceive each other. If we're being honest with ourselves, we know that some of the biggest train wrecks in our lives, some of the biggest wounds that we carry around were the result of either lying to ourselves or lying to others or being lied to. And that's because words are very powerful things. Jesus knew that. And so Jesus devoted an entire section of his relatively short Sermon on the Mount just to this idea of lying versus truth-telling. And so obviously in Jesus' mind, this is very important stuff. Right? Because you got to remember, he just finished talking about anger and lust and contempt and hatred and marriage and divorce. That's really, really heavy stuff. And he didn't stop and say, okay, that's heavy, that's good enough for now. Break out into small groups, I'll pass out discussion questions or whatever. Instead, he just carries on into this next topic, which tells us that regardless of how important we see truth-telling, in Jesus' mind at least, it's absolutely vital. It's every bit as worth talking about as our marriages, our divorces, our anger, etc. All right, so keep that in mind as I read through these verses. According to Jesus, this stuff is very important stuff that we should pay attention to. All right, here's how he starts this section. He says this. He says, again, you've heard that it was said to the people long ago, do not break your oath, but keep the oaths that you've made to the Lord. All right, and right away, this concept of oath-keeping, oath-making, and breaking makes no sense to us in our context and in our culture. So let me give you a short history lesson, all right? Promise it'll be short. I originally, in my first draft of the talk, I had 3 pages talking about the history and culture of the stuff because I think it's fascinating, but I read it and I was like, you are a boring nerd and people will go to sleep. So I cut it out. So this is the short version of what he's getting at with all this oath stuff, okay? So in Jesus' day, oaths were very important. In Jewish culture and then in other cultures too. And so if a person were to make an oath to his or her God, like Jesus just mentioned, that oath was legally binding. Okay, so you can picture it like signing a contract in today's culture, legally binding. Right? And if you didn't follow through on that oath, there were legal consequences for you breaking your word. So as a random example, let's say this. If someone in Jesus' day were to say, I swear to my God, any person or thing that's called themselves a God, it could be Yahweh, it could be Zeus, Kanye West, anyone who's ever said that they're a God. So if in Jesus' time they say, I swear to my God that I'll pay this land off in full by the end of the year. Just the act of them speaking the words out loud are legally binding. They're now bound to keeping that promise. And if they don't keep the promise and they don't pay off the land in full by the end of the year, then it was then legal to kick the guy off the land or take all of his money or flog him and even in some cases kill him. Right? Just like today, there were huge, huge books on how to execute justice just when it came to oaths. And so in this first verse, here's what Jesus is getting at. He's basically saying this. He's going, all right, so you guys know that if you make an oath to God, you better keep your promise because according to the rules that you guys have developed for yourselves, you could be killed for not keeping your word. And everybody nodded their heads because everyone knew that, right? It was just part of their society and culture. But then Jesus says this next. He says, but I tell you, don't swear at all. Don't make any oath of any kind. Right? Don't swear at all, either by heaven, for it's God's throne, or by the earth, for it's his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it's the city of the great king. And don't swear by your head, for you can't make even one hair white or black. What's he getting at there? Well, again, like I said, if you swear by your God, it's legally binding. But in this culture, if you swear by earth, or heaven, or your city, or your hair, it's not legally binding. And there's no drastic punishment for you breaking your word. And people would take advantage of that all of the time. They would make unbinding oaths to add seriousness and weight and power to their words, when in reality, it didn't matter if they kept their word or not. So an unbinding oath, swearing by heaven or your city or your hair or whatever, it's like an ancient equivalent of a little kid today saying, I promise I'll clean my room. But they have their fingers crossed behind their backs the entire time. Right? They're using words to manipulate you into thinking they're being honest, when in reality, they have no intention of keeping their word. And Jesus says, don't do that. Right? Jesus says, don't use your words to manipulate other people and don't promise something if you have no intention of keeping your word. And a lot has changed in culture over 2,000 years, but that has not. Words are powerful things, and we use them to hurt people. Right? You can use words to manipulate people, to gain power over them, to elevate yourself, to hurt people. Right? That stupid old phrase, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never kill me. What heartless psychopath developed that phrase? Well, that's just not true. Words hurt. I'd be willing to bet that for a lot of us in this room, some of our deepest wounds have to do with something our parents or our spouses or our friends said about us. How they tried to define us. It was terrible. It hurt, and we carry those words around with us today. Words have power. Jesus understood the power of a word, and so he says, don't use your words to manipulate other people, and don't promise something if you have no intention of keeping your word. Just don't do it. That's not the kind of heart that I want to give you, is what he says. And then there's also this other thing, this other real subtle thing that the people Jesus was speaking to, they would have gotten this, but we might not because it's just been 2,000 years since he said it and a lot has changed, all right? But there's this subtle thing he's doing when he says this where he's making a jab at religious people. This is us. And specifically, religious liars. Because back in Jesus' day, religious liars would cross their fingers behind their backs and they would say, as an example, they would say, hey, listen, I swear by heaven itself that God said you'll go to hell today if you don't put money in the blue buckets on your way out the door. It's an unbinding oath. Fingers crossed behind the back, it doesn't mean anything, but people would hear that and they would get freaked out and they go, well, I don't want to go to hell, and so they would empty their wallets on the way out of temple or synagogue. Religious liars were making empty promises on God's behalf in order to manipulate people, and God does not like that. Right? And so Jesus is saying, do not speak on my behalf if you're going to lie about it. And don't use the power of my name to manipulate other people or to make yourself look better. Don't use me that way. And before we write ourselves off and go, okay, phew, I don't do that, so I'm covered, let me first explain what I think religious lying looks like a lot today. I think it happens a lot whenever someone says something like, hey, so I really feel like God told me to tell you, fill in the blank. I really feel like God told me to tell you to stop doing this or stop doing that or be different or do this for me. And I know, of course, that God still speaks and has influence over people's lives and decisions. I've put my whole bet on that, and he does that with me. I'm not talking about the times it's genuine. I'm talking about the times that people use God as a tool to gain leverage over other people, to manipulate them, to get what they want. And I can get real mad about that because there's way too many churches and there's way too many Christians who do this, and I'm sick of it. So I'm just saying what Jesus is saying. Don't ever speak on your God's behalf if you're going to lie about it. And don't ever convince yourself or tell yourself or others that God is speaking to you when you know it's just you speaking to you. Don't do it. Basically, don't lie to yourself or others about your own faith. It's the most important thing going on in existence. Don't pretend about it. And that's why I love this place. That's why I was drawn to this church back before I believed in any of this stuff. Because at Flatirons, we won't ever skirt around the hard stuff. We'll ask the difficult questions, and you can always be honest about where you're at in faith and in doubt. And I love this place because Jim and I and our staff will never use the God card to gain power over you. It's ridiculous. And that's what Jesus is saying in here. It's a subtle jab at the religious people. He's going, don't manipulate others and then drag my name through the mud. So that's all the stuff that's kind of going on in those 4 verses. All right, Jesus is saying, don't use your words to manipulate other people, and don't promise something if you have no intention of keeping your word, especially if you claim to be speaking on my behalf, is what he says. He says that just can't be further from the kind of people he wants to change us into. All right, but then he's not done. All right, he's got one more thing to say, and he introduces us to a new way of life, a way of living in the kingdom of heaven, a with God kind of life. And he says this. He says, simply let your yes be yes, and your no, no. And anything beyond this comes from the evil one. Our way of saying this today might be something like, just put your money where your mouth is, right? Or just practice what you preach. In the last verse, Jesus gets to the heart of the matter. And the heart of the matter, according to Jesus, is he wants to make us into men and women of integrity. Integrity. That's a word we tend to use a lot, and sometimes we don't know exactly what it means. And so here's what I mean when I say integrity. Integrity is when my words and my actions are the same. My words and my actions don't ever contradict one another. I speak the truth, period, about myself and about others. I don't manipulate other people with sly words and empty promises. And when I say I'll do something, it's as good as done. I'll do it. That's integrity. And that's the heart that Jesus wants to give us. Your yes actually means yes, and your no actually means no. Wouldn't that be refreshing? And I believe that if we can get this stuff right, then everything else we've talked about in here over the last few weeks will fall into place over time. Let me explain what I mean by that. So this let your yes be yes, your no be no thing. If we take a silly, stupid, dumb example of this, we can see that life would be better lived this way. All right, so a dumb example of this. Anytime someone's like, hey man, can you do me a favor? And without thinking about it, you're like, yeah, sure. After that moment, before the favor, let's admit, is awful. Because you're just waiting to see like, oh, what have I done to myself? Like the rest of my day is in this person's hands now, right? Sometimes the favor is simple. And like, hey, if you see so-and-so, let them know I'm looking for them. And you're like, okay, I can do that, right? Other times the favor is ridiculous. Like, hey, can you take me to the airport anytime I need to fly somewhere for the rest of my life? And inside you're like, no. And outside you're like, yeah, of course, I could do that for you, right? And Jesus is saying, just say no if it's no. Just say yes if it's yes. It's like the song we just played. Just say it ain't so if it ain't so. Life would be better lived this way. And that's just a silly, dumb example, but if you apply it to all the heavy stuff that we've talked about in here over the last 6 weeks, all the stuff that Jesus has talked about so far in Matthew 5, we see is true. Take anger, for example. Typically we get angry because someone else told us no when they should have said yes. No, I don't want to be married to you anymore. No, you don't get the promotion or the transfer or the raise that you wanted even though you've earned it. No, I won't treat you like you deserve. They said no when they should have said yes, and it made us angry. And that leads to contempt, like we talked about a few weeks ago. Contempt is when you redefine who a person is so that they're worthless now. This person doesn't matter, and I do not care what happens to them. That's not integrity. We're now speaking and thinking untruths about another person. Think about forgiveness, which we talked about a few weeks ago. How much bitterness and resentment have we built up in our marriages and our friendships or any other relationship, all because the disagreement or the argument or the meeting came to an end, and your spouse or boss or whoever looked at you and they said, are we all good now? And you said yes, but you weren't. There was still more that needed to be said, more that you needed to get out on the table. You just got exhausted by the difficult conversation or scared of it. You wanted to go home or you wanted to go to bed. And so you said, I forgive you. You said, we're all good now, but it wasn't true. This is how contempt and resentment and bitterness can consume a person. We keep saying, yes, it's over when it's really not yet. Go to lust and adultery, marriage, divorce, all the stuff that we've spent 3 weeks now talking about. My question is, are we saying no in our marriages when we should be saying yes? Are we saying no to stuff like, no, we don't need counseling right now. It'll work itself out. No, the pornography isn't hurting anybody. No, flirting with the new guy at work isn't going to lead anywhere. Are we saying no when deep down inside we understand that maybe it's yes. Maybe we should deal with it. Integrity, what Jesus is talking about right now. Integrity, isn't it at the end of the day the ideal for a marriage? Right? Like in a fantasy world, all right? Wouldn't it be ideal if at every single altar of every single wedding, when the bride and groom say, I do, it meant that they really would? And I'm not trying to guilt trip us on ways that we've not kept our vows perfectly. No one's done that perfectly. Instead, I'm just saying that's what we intended, right? That's what we wanted to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health. And we wanted that, to love and to cherish from this day forward until death do us part. When we said those words, we meant it. And in most cases, and there's definitely exceptions to this, which we talked about the last 2 weeks, but in most cases, wouldn't it just be better if we and our spouses kept our vows in integrity? Would that lead to a better marriage? Jesus might have called it a more abundant marriage. I do meant we would. And yes means yes. See, Jesus has our best interests in mind. He has our best interests in mind when he says he wants to make us into the kind of men and women who have integrity. Our words and our actions are the same. If I said it out loud, it's as good as done, and I'll never have my fingers crossed behind my back. And if we can shift into a life of integrity, all the other stuff falls in place. This is where I want to switch gears. For the last few minutes we have, I want to change subject here. Because we can all tend to get fixated on personal application, right? What do I do with the things I'm learning? And that's great. It's good. You should always do stuff with the things that we're learning. But I can't get any clearer or simpler than what Jesus just said. He said, just let your yes be yes and your no, no. I can't say it any better than that. You know, it's easier said than done, but he still wants us to do it. So I guess I would say you could start paying attention this week to times that you say yes, but you really meant no, and vice versa, and allow yourself to taste the freedom that comes with the courage of just having said no when you meant it, or yes when you meant it. Just be a bit more honest with yourself and with others over the next few weeks. Jesus said it's a better way to live, and I believe him. So you could start there. But again, like I said, I want to switch gears. And here's why. So all throughout the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says he wants to get to the heart of the matter, and he wants to transform our hearts. But specifically, he wants to transform our hearts so that they become more like his heart. And so that means that anytime Jesus gets to the heart of the matter in the Sermon on the Mount, he is also giving us a glimpse into the way that God's heart operates and works. He's giving us insider information to the kinds of things that God is committed to and cares very deeply about. And in this case, Jesus is giving us a glimpse into the reality that God is a God of integrity. His words and his actions are always the same. His yes is always yes. His no is always no. And his promises are never failing. Or in other words, God always keeps his word. Always. This is actually one of the greatest things that you could think about or believe when it comes to our faith. If you're in the room and you're just now starting to put your toe in the waters of Jesus and faith in the Bible and all that stuff, first of all, welcome. You can come back here as often as you want before you believe. But if you're starting to test the waters out right now, this is going to be one of the first things you'll have to wrestle through. Whether or not you believe God is a God of integrity, he'll keep his word and he's not lying to us. It's so important. And so then it's unsurprising that we see this truth all over the Bible. This idea that God does not ever lie to us. And this idea that whenever God says something, it happens. Immediately, like the thing he says happens right away, then and there. It's done. It's finished. You go back to the very first chapter of the very first book of the Bible. God creates everything and he says, let there be light. And then poof, light exists. He does not say, I have an idea called light. And then he goes with some North Pole angel elves to a workshop somewhere and they draw up blueprints for what a sun could be or something. He doesn't do that. He just says, let there be light. And the act of him speaking creates it. He just speaks and things happen. He said, let there be plants and trees. Let there be birds and fish. Let there be cats and dogs and wombats, whatever. I don't know what those are, but he made him. So, let there be wombat. Let there be people, men and women. Let there be you. Let there be Ben. He just speaks and it happens. His words contain power. What about when Jesus rose a dead guy named Lazarus back to life? Some of us know this story. The guy was dead for days. Jesus stands at the entrance of his tomb, and what does he do? He doesn't go in with a first aid trauma kit, and he doesn't perform some seance or something. He stands at the entrance of the tomb, and he speaks, and he says, Lazarus, wake up. And the guy comes back to life. God's words and actions are always the same. They happen at the same time, and they're powerful. When God speaks, things happen. And because of that, anytime that God makes us a promise, we can count on it. When he makes us a promise, it's done, it's finished. And so we can quit arguing with him about it. And that's why this little simple section of the Sermon on the Mount, the let your yes be yes and your no be no, is one of my favorite parts of the Sermon on the Mount. And it's because Jesus is an incredible teacher. He's the master of the craft. And he knew that this was the moment in his sermon when you and I would most need to pause and remember that God has not changed his mind about us. This would be the point in the sermon to do that, because Jesus just finished talking about very real life in very real ways. And he just finished saying some of the hardest stuff he was going to have to say in this sermon. He talked about our anger and our hatred and our contempt, our unwillingness to be forgiving people. He talked about our sexual slavery, our lust, our affairs and divorces, and our decaying marriages. He just finished digging real deep. And then we, here at Flatirons, we just made it through the same section of the sermon. Right? We just spent the last 6 weeks digging real deep and taking the most intimate and personal parts of our lives and looking at the goodness and perfection that Jesus wants for them. And after doing that for over a month, for a lot of us in this room right now, we're probably very highly aware of how far from perfect we are. We just spent 3 weeks talking about sexuality and marriage and divorce, and there's probably a lot of us ready to throw in the towel. Right? If that's what marriage or sexuality or forgiveness looks like in a with God kind of life, then I already screwed it up. It's impossible. I'm out. And see, Jesus knew, and I know, that this would be the point in his sermon, and this would be the point in our series, when you and I would be most ready to pack our bags and either A, leave Jesus in the dust, or B, set out on another never-ending guilt trip. And so Jesus hits pause to remind us that his yes is always yes, and his promises do not change. To remind us that he did not have his fingers crossed behind his back at the beginning of the sermon that we talked about months ago, when he said, blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are the spiritual flunkies and those who mourn and those who are meek. And when he said that nothing can disqualify us from the kingdom of heaven, from a with God kind of life, nothing can separate us from him, including your anger, contempt, lust, divorce, adultery, you name it. Jesus strategically picks this moment in his sermon to remind us that his promises don't change, which means that there is no mistake big enough, no baggage from your past. There is no skeleton in your closet damning enough to separate you from his love and his care and his devotion. He chooses this moment in his sermon to remind us that his yes is always yes, and that has not and it will never change. And so after spending 6 weeks talking about some of the most deeply wounded parts of our lives, let's follow Jesus' cue in this sermon. And let's allow Jesus to remind us that every excuse you've used for why you're too far gone, too messed up, too broken, too wounded with too much baggage, and every dark part of your life that has reared its ugly head in the last 6 weeks and made you go, see, this is why I'm a hopeless case. And this is why you couldn't possibly ever care about me, Jesus. In the midst of all those things, Jesus is reminding us right now that all of those self-damning things that we obsess over were erased when your God hung on a cross 2,000 years ago and cried out with his dying breath, "It's finished. It's done." It is the climax and the result of every oath and promise your God has ever made you on your behalf. It's done. It's finished. You can quit arguing with him about whether or not you're salvageable. You won't win the argument because your God has already spoken and he said, it's finished. Your forgiveness is completed. Your forgiveness is accomplished. It's done and over with. And we go, well, how is this possible? And he says, because I said so. And when I speak, things happen. And I never go back on my word. And when he promised that you're forgiven, yes, even you, he wasn't crossing his fingers. They were nailed to a cross. He is not going back on it. Jesus knows us really well. And so he knew that this was the point in his sermon and the point in our series when you and I would most need reminded that our God is a God of integrity. His yes means yes. His no means no. His promises do not change, and he never crosses his fingers behind his back. And so what I'd like to do is take a moment to be reminded of that. And I'm going to ask you to stand up with me right now. And I'm going to ask that you close your eyes. Because the chances are it's just been a hard month. You know, if you've been leaning into this stuff, it's probably just been a long slog of a month. That's what happens whenever we choose to encounter our anger, our hatred, our sexual baggage, our relationships. But I promise, and Jesus promises, he didn't bring this stuff up to condemn us. He brought this stuff up because he knows it is the most important stuff you have going on in your life. And so he cares very deeply about it. And regardless of what you were taught at the church you grew up in or at your last church, and regardless of what you thought to be true about Jesus, Jesus talks about this stuff because he desperately wants good for you. We can't forget that right now. We can't forget that in the midst of a deeply personal series based on this deeply personal sermon that Jesus gave. And so I'm going to pray over us. Right? And this prayer is a version of my favorite passage in the whole Bible. It's incredible. It's a promise about God given to us from God himself. He just knew that we wouldn't have the words to describe him, so he gave them to us. And as I pray this, and as these words float out in all these different rooms at all these different campuses, cling to them. Cling to this promise from your God today and tomorrow and throughout the next week and for the rest of your lives. This is the promise that God has given us. And he does not have his fingers crossed behind his back. This is Romans 8. God, you fight for us. You don't fight against us. And God, if you're the one fighting for us, then who could possibly stand against us? You didn't even spare the life of your own son, Jesus. You gave him up for us to rescue us. And if you're willing to go to those great lengths on our behalf, then we will choose to trust in the promise that you will graciously give us all things, especially when we desperately need it. And since you're on our side, who could possibly bring any charge against us? We are the people you've forgiven. You're the judge, and you forgave us. So who could possibly condemn us? No one can condemn us. I can't even condemn myself. And we know now that your son, Jesus, died and he came back to life. And he sits right now at your right hand, and he points to us in all of these rooms, and he says, these people are with me. These people are forgiven, and that's that. It's done. It's finished. And so who could separate us from the love of Christ? Can trouble or hardship or persecution or famine or nakedness or danger or sword? Seriously, what can separate us from the love of Jesus Christ? My baggage, my past, my shame, my weakness? God says no, and so we say no. No, even in the midst of all these things, we are more than conquerors through Jesus who loved us. And so God, please convince us that neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, not my past and not my future, nor any power, neither height nor depth or anything else in all of creation will ever be able to separate us from the love of God that we have found in Jesus Christ, our King. And it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.